Rich Report, a podcast with news and information on the world of big data. Today, my guest is from a new company called Junar. We have Diego May. He is the CEO and co-founder of the company. So, Diego, welcome to the show today.
Hey, thank you, Rich. Thank you for having us.
It's my pleasure. You know, I'm always excited to hear about new companies, and you guys are very new on the scene. So, we've got your slides up. Why don't you tell us about Junar?
Perfect. Hey, so we'll jump to that directly. Junar is a company focused on open data, and open data is a subset of big data, and now we're going to tell you a bit more about that. So we're going to be covering three basic things in this presentation. The first one, tell you a bit about this data economy, this emerging data economy. This is a term that we have, or a phrase that we have embraced, that we have created, and I think it talks about this relationship between big data and open data. So we're going to explore that. Then I'm going to talk about the open data opportunity, what's going on, what's happening, how this is relevant, and then give a quick case on kind of the solutions and best practices around open data. Now, there clearly is a big data revolution. We like calling this the third renaissance of the internet, now related to information and data services, right? And this is not only because governments, corporations, NGOs, associations, even academia are opening data, are getting a lot of data, but also because a lot of data is being generated every day by devices, by software. When a banana comes from Costa Rica, or you go and you do a bike ride, there's a lot of very interesting data that could be generated, that could end up being part of a data set, and that could be of use for somebody somewhere, right? So this is what is happening, right? There's a lot of data out there, and I'm not going to bore you with what everybody knows, right? That this is only going to grow. But what is very relevant to us in this open data world is that some of these huge amounts of data that exist today is going to be opened. And this is our vision, right? A world where data is freed and then global innovation can surge. So this is the importance around open data. There's a lot of data. Some of that will be opened, and that can trigger a lot of very relevant things that we're going to now cover. Now, think about this. Data must be opened to realize its value. Hold that thought and let me take you back in history. 15 or 20 years ago, probably if you were in an organization and you wanted to access a data set or a database, that was an isolated event. You were probably a geek, or you needed a geek beside you to be able to access this big data set or big database and do things, right? Today, we're in a much better situation. Today, we have a lot of BI tools. We have a lot of big data analytics. And that allows companies, corporations, again, institutions, to understand the data they have and to make decisions based on this data. Now, what is emerging, and what you can see now in the slide there, is that possibility of allowing these organizations to securely identifying some of this data and opening that to the world. Now, the question that may come up is who is opening data, right? Who are the organizations that are opening this data? This data is being opened, first of all, by governments. Governments have been the ones that kind of started with this movement. The Obama administration and this data.gov initiative not only were well accepted here in the US, but trickled down to a lot of different countries in the world. Today, Chile, Costa Rica, a lot of countries, UK, a lot of countries have embraced this and are opening a lot of these data sets that they own. Now, that's not only the case. Then you have multilaterals like the World Bank or even the IADB and a lot of others that have very relevant data and are opening this data to the world. And then you can also go to NGOs, associations, academia, and of course, business. There's a case, for example, Nike did a hackathon And this hackathon was triggered by a lot of data they opened, and then that was used by a lot of people to develop applications, right? So again, covering the whole spectrum of organizations that generate relevant data and then want to be able to connect with their audiences through this data. The question then comes, so why do these organizations want to open this data, right? And again, there's a lot of value on opening this data. The first one that we saw with a lot of different organizations is transparency. When you think about governments and multilaterals, this is a key driver, right? The possibility of being more transparent, more accountable by just opening data. The second thing is collaboration. Collaboration and efficiency, right? You want to be able to allow your shareholders, stakeholders, anybody in your partners to be able to collaborate with you with given the data that you're opening. A third case is innovation. When you have companies or institutions that have a lot of very relevant data, then they can allow others, the crowds, do crowdsourcing around their data to create very relevant applications and other type of things that make sense for them. And finally, visibility, right? You have the case where you have a lot of people always thinking on what content should I put in my website. Well, if you have relevant data, then it makes sense to make the data visible and bring you all the traffic and bring you all the connection with your audience that you deserve because you own relevant data. Now, this is not new. There are a lot of organizations that have been opening data and are opening data today. World Bank is one very relevant case. They not only open data about their operations, but also about the knowledge they generate, the reports they generate. Then, as mentioned before, UK has been not only at government levels, but also at data journalism levels. They're opening a lot of data that is used by a lot of people today. Then Bloomberg here, a big announcement of this open data policy in New York. And then you have a lot of hackathons going around the place. So again, the big connector here, there's a lot of big data inside companies. Then there's some of this data that gets open to the world, and then that is generating a lot of relevant, interesting things going on. Now, let me cover one case for open data that may be very illustrative of what's going on here. LabCA is an association. Basically, they generate reports every year. These reports, as many institutions do, are posted in their websites as a PDF file, right? Sometimes you see governments posting a lot of Excel or CSV files. And what happens there is that if it's a PDF, that's kind of the worst case scenario. You have a file that is not easily crawled or indexed by the search engines. You have data inside. This, what you can see here is a table that this report has that is very relevant, very interesting, that could be used by a lot of people. But today, because it's in this format, it cannot be used. It can just be copy-pasted into a PowerPoint, or it can be typed to be used in an Excel, right? So that is kind of open data 1.0, just putting those files somewhere in a website. The 2.0 version of that is allowing for this data to be transformed into something that can be easily discovered by the search engines and then easily used by any type of user, right? And when I mean use, it's being able to download this data, of course, to then use this dynamically in spreadsheets, to be able to embed also this in blogs or websites. So lots of different things. And of course, the possibility of allowing these to become shareable within the different usual social networks and all that. Now, if an organization is thinking about opening data, what makes sense to consider are the following things. One, collecting this data, right? You have all your big data inside. You have that big data in different type of systems. That is generating a lot of data sets. Sometimes those come in different formats. So the possibility of bringing any type of format and any type of source, if you want, of this data into some kind of repository, that's what we define there by the collect, right? That's step one. Step two is enhancing, transforming. What we see and we saw in a lot of clients is that basically just uploading a huge data set means very little to your audience, right? What makes sense is to transform those huge data sets into tidbits of data that could make sense, into live charts that could make sense, into themed dashboards that could be relevant to your audience, right? So transforming those huge data sets into something that is relevant to whoever is going to be viewing these. And then a third thing is allowing for the easy publishing of this now open data, right? Anybody that is thinking about opening data should have the possibility of defining when and where this data is going to be published and opened. So that's a third point. And then fourth and fifth are related to allowing this social interaction with the audience, right? Allowing notes, comments, allowing easy sharing in the different social networks that make sense. And finally, of course, getting all the reports that somehow will tell you what's happening with your data. Again, and this is kind of to sum up here, there is this data revolution happening. There are a lot of organizations ranging from governments to corporations to NGOs, associations, and academia that are embracing this open data. And then there's a big opportunity for these organizations to use this and be more transparent, to collaborate more, to innovate more, and to gain a lot of exposure through this opening of some of their big internal data.
Thank you for that, Diego. So some questions about, what forms these open data sets take. I mean, do people create nicely packaged zip files and say, okay, we're the government and we've put the census data in one place, or is it not that simple? I mean, what does it look like?
Look, what's currently happening in a lot of cases is that these organizations that have the desire of opening some of these big data are basically gathering these. There are some ways of just setting up some repositories, and then they gather all this data, and these can be, again, the usual formats are Excel and PDF. Sometimes people that are really thinking more about open data are putting those in CSV. That's kind of an easier way because that doesn't force anybody to use Excel per se. They can use any spreadsheet application and open that. And basically those type of files end up showing up in two ways. One is just having links in websites, and you can go to data.gov, or you can go to, I don't know, I could name you a lot of different organizations, think tanks that generate data that basically put links to these files. So that's one. And then sometimes what you see is just having some embeds of HTML tables in different sections in websites, which is just another way of kind of an evolution of just having a file hanging on a website. Now, as mentioned before, the problems around this is that those files usually don't have a lot of SEO. They cannot be found. So a great asset that is hidden is worth probably nothing, right? What you want is the possibility of these files to shine in the web and to be able to be discovered by whoever is looking at this data. And that's why we're kind of seeing this movement towards opening data with platforms that allow for this to be clearly seen.
So how does Junar help? Do you index it? Do you collect it? Do you index it? Or what does Junar do there?
Yeah, in our specific case, what we do is we give this SaaS platform to our clients. And basically what they do is they themselves collect the data. And what happens is behind the scenes, our engines and our platform is transforming that into unique web pages with the right headers and with the right metadata that allow for this to be easily crawled and indexed. So that's one side of things. And the other is we have a workflow that allows for people that is non-IT, not super IT knowledgeable, to be able to do this publishing by themselves very easily. And that means they can just open this data, and then this data can be found in their websites, or now they can decide that some of this data should be exposed as main pages in their data sections in their websites. So, there are a lot of different options that we allow our clients to work with so that they can open this data the right way. By the way, there's another thing here, which is there's an interesting fight around standards on how to open data, and you have the case of linked data, W3C, you have other ways of opening data. So what we do is we allow for these clients not to focus on these kind of things. When they open data through this platform, they are complying with a lot of these different standards around how to open data, right?
So Diego, do you think that maybe some of these organizations that are offering up this public data might also become your clients and become consumers of other people's data?
Oh yes, definitely. So we clearly see anybody that has relevant data and they want to be opening some of this data, they want to innovate on how to open this data, and they want to trigger some collaboration. Yes, they are perfect potential clients to what we do. And what you mentioned is also very, very interesting, which is there's going to be a moment in time, probably in the next year, 2 years, or a bit more. Who knows exactly what's the date going to be, but yes, that a lot of these organizations are going to be opening a lot of this data the right way. And then this data is going to be able to be reused by other organizations. So you could be talking about big data, this kind of cumbersome, and you could be referring to some data that has been opened by another organization, and you could be repurposing all these relevant data to your audience. So basically, it's not only you uploading relevant data, but you also connecting to some others that may be posting to the world all these relevant data as well.
Well, great. Well, Diego, kind of a wrap-up question here. I've read the phrase recently in the news that data is the new oil, right? It's the new petroleum. Would you agree with that? And what does that mean for Junar?
Oh, look, I completely agree with that. I think when we were now saying that data or this open data is the third renaissance of the internet, we really mean it, right? It first was infrastructure, then it was business applications. Now is the time for information services, which basically means information and data being open and being serviced to any constituency that wants to use this data. So yes, we completely agree on that term. And we see that this data revolution is happening, and we're here to kind of power this data economy.
Well, great. Well, Diego May, I want to thank you once again for coming on the show today and telling us about your new company.
Hey, thanks a lot, Rich.
You bet, you bet. Okay, folks, that's it for the Rich Report. Stay tuned for more news and information on the world of big data.